No, of course. How are you? And this friend of yours has come before, I think.
No, this is his first time.
I prayed behind you once before.
Right.
It's Mr. Alan Reid, from Catholic background, from Dublin, from Ireland.
Right.
So, alhamdulillah, he has decided to join the Ba'ath.
Already decided, mashallah. Alhamdulillah.
For the last 4 months he has been actively studying.
The people of Dublin, as best as I know, are sincere in their religion. Either way. And if one of them says yes, I do agree with him that it is real yes. They don't take religious decisions lightly. Alhamdulillah. Welcome you to the Ahmadiyya community with all my heart. Please.
So my first question is based on my encounter with a Christian missionary 2 days ago, and he was adamant on a scientific point of view about the fact that Jesus is the Son of God.
Scientifically?
Yeah, scientifically.
How?
So he didn't give me an answer, but I told him I would come back to him with an answer, a solid answer. So I was just wondering
what was his idea? What was he attempting to prove scientifically?
He wouldn't. When I asked him to prove it scientifically, he was dodging the subject.
Dodging?
He's dodging the subject because I brought the subject of chromosomes, and he went quiet. But I said to him that I will come back to him and a more detailed answer.
Right.
So if you could please explain
this.
You
see, the most important thing to be settled to begin with is the meaning of son as they have in their mind. It is for them to define the sonship of Jesus Christ in terms which will satisfy the human mind as to the reality of sonship as they hold it. This is the most important thing. Without defining the sonship of Jesus, if you proceed in a debate, they will go on shifting their positions and sometimes coming very close to the Muslim position without accepting that in so many words. So this is their evasive plan, which must not be permitted to begin. I mean, you check it right in the offing. So that is why you have to restart your dialogue with him, offering him any time he can take in defining exactly the nature of sonship. Is it physical? If it is physical, then the moment this physical existence began, that is the beginning of Jesus Christ. And that is not the beginning of God. They're two different and distinctly separate things. So did God have a beginning like this? No. If not, then the attributes of the two are different. How could a son be different in his attributes to his father? The father has no beginning, and the son has a sort of beginning. So the fact should immediately be noticed that both the father and the son do not possess the same features. If they possess the same features, then the question of a father and a question of a son does not arise. You understand the point? So this is how this dilemma should be defined as a dilemma for them to resolve. Then whatever he says, come back to me.
No, inshallah.
Yes. You got it?
Yeah, no.
It's very clear, yes. Please, any question?
Yes. In making the decision to convert to Islam, I've been supported by my friends, very close friends, a number of whom are Irish and are not particularly religious. But obviously being Irish,
would you please introduce yourself, because the first time you're appearing on our television service.
Excuse me.
And the world who is watching us would be interested in knowing more about you.
Well, my name is Alan Reid, and I'm from Dublin, Ireland, and I've been living here in England for the last 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Being Irish, as I said, the Irish like a drink.
Of course.
Alcohol is.
Well, they know how to make best use of.
Alcohol is part of society in Ireland.
I agree.
And in talking about Islam to my friends, they repeatedly cannot comprehend how, if Islam is to be accepted worldwide eventually, how Ireland is going to stop drinking.
Very interesting.
They just cannot comprehend it, and on a personal level I understand, but I still can't see it. What I would like to ask you is, bearing in mind the major significance that the Prophet Jesus has within Catholicism, in fact, talking to my friends, I get the impression that there is a blurring between who is God. Is it God or is it Jesus? It's a very common misperception in Ireland.
Yes.
But why is Jesus associated with alcohol through his changing the water into wine? Because a lot of Catholics will make reference to that. Why should we give up alcohol if Jesus was related to alcohol? And why did
that wine, which he seems to have created out of water, intoxicate him?
It's not the fact whether Jesus actually drank alcohol or not, but
whoever drank that water turned into alcohol, was he intoxicated in material sense?
I believe at the wedding feast of Cana, they all had a good time, so perhaps.
First of all, the very incident has to be investigated, whether it did place or did not take place. And what was the purpose? What was the object which Jesus achieved out of this? Was it to intoxicate people who were short of alcohol? If that is the purpose, this is no purpose to be performed by a prophet of God or by any godly person. It's meaningless. Secondly, to investigate the whole episode from the point of view of authenticity, it is a very important factor. As far as I have done this exercise, I find no reason to believe that this is well reported. And it is reported by dependable sources whom we can attribute that authenticity which is required. A thing which is extraordinary requires extraordinary witnesses. A thing which is extraordinary requires a chain of witnesses in which no single link can be found suspicious. This is a fundamental principle of, shall we say, our ordinary legal system. This is fundamental to human rationality, that more out of the way a thing is described to have happened, the more solid proof you require for it to accept. You agree with that? That's right. Now, if I say that this table has turned into a horse, a stupid believer could say, yes, it can turn into a horse because Allah can do anything. All right, He can do anything. But where is the solid proof that it did turn into a horse? If it were not seen by you at this moment in time, if the table is removed to some other room and I tell you that this has turned into a horse, would you accept it? Most certainly not. You will not accept it despite the fact that you know me personally and I am reporting this to you. Yet all who follow me will refuse to accept this statement from me unless I rationally prove to them that it is made possible by God. Is correct? Now you are talking of history. In fact, you are talking of tales which you confuse with history. And such tales are not reported authentically according to the Christian scholars who investigate these matters. So to begin your premise with a supposition which is not possible,
Okay.
no argument can be built. Either way. So I believe this is all a story, or if at all true, it has to be a vision. In visions all these things can happen. Moreover, if you take it metaphorically, then a meaning can appear out of this absurdity, which should be very profound. So what is spirit? It is not the material spirit you are thinking about. Here in this context, if this episode is to be taken seriously, out of water is born the spirit of life. And this is a claim which is common both to the Quran and to the Holy Quran and to the Holy Bible. Every life of every form was created out of water, in material sense as well as in the spiritual sense. So spirit also came into being from water. And that is what he was demonstrating to them. He was drawing their attention to the fact that why are you wasting your time and your life in the material spirit and searching for it, while I have that heavenly water with me, which can create spirit. As such, I accept this, whether the reporters are authentic or not, because then it will perfectly agree with the spirit of Jesus Christ, which I understand. So anything which agrees with a noble character must be accepted whether somebody authentic has reported it or not. And that is the only version I believe is acceptable to us, keeping in view the great nature of Jesus Christ's office. You understand?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Yes, you have come again. Eh?
Yes.
Yes, please. Make a water.
There's a story in the Bible about Abraham that he was traveling with his wife, and when they got to a place, he was asked whether the woman was his wife, and he denied that she's not. So did he lie at that moment?
Have you understood the question? You have?
So he's asking about the time that Ibrahim was traveling with his wife. And
Yeah,
when-
that much I thought
When he was
you were
asked,
referring to, yes?
yeah, when he was asked that is this your wife, and he said no, this was his sister. And the claim, there's an accusation of a lie there.
Does the Bible recall it? Or the Holy Quran?
The Bible.
Bible. So the people who follow Bible, they should answer this question. I also follow Bible in the manner of speaking, as I already described. I follow the Bible when it means something which can be attributed to God. If it does not, then either you have to search for the true meaning within, or reject it altogether as a man-made fabrication. So I always look at this incident as such. I believe this incident is impossible to have happened. Absolutely impossible. If Abraham had a wife and he was traveling, could he send her own wife to the castle, knowing that something wrong could be done to her? That's the first question. Secondly, he could not have made an excuse, offered an excuse which was likely for that something ugly to have happened. Because if he had said he was his wife, the king should have dared not touch her. Because the whole incident is mentioned in a manner that the king does respect Abraham. So if he had any respect for Abraham, what was the stupid meaning of telling a lie to endanger the chastity of his own wife? If he had said he is a cousin, then the king was free to do whatever he likes. So that is why I don't accept this episode of the Bible as it is mentioned. You see, it contradicts the reality of Abraham and reality of common sense. Thank you.
Actually, Hazur, I had a few questions. One of them was actually again on a biblical account, which came to my mind concerning Hazrat Lot, where he is also accused in the Bible of committing an immoral act with his two daughters. And I was going to ask again the Islamic point of view from the Quran on this issue, because this.
You see, I would only say this much to the episode you are referring, if that is the episode you are referring, of acting as a husband to his own daughters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And bearing children out of them. However much he was intoxicated, he is told by the Bible to have committed this unthinkable, sin which can be attributed to a sane, ordinary person. Cannot be attributed. Yet it is attributed so daringly to a prophet of God. To a prophet of God who was fighting for the chastity. He was a symbol of chastity. He was telling men of Sodom not to behave in a manner as to disregard the expectations of God which they have of His own creation and His servants. Now, in a manner of speaking, I have said this mildly, but all his life was a confrontal fight against the bad habits of the people of Rome. And yet to indulge in a crime much more heinous and unacceptable himself. It's not acceptable. Impossible. Yet, incidentally, it also speaks of the evils of the wine you were discussing just now. The people who accept it, being Christians or Jews, cannot accept it unless they are themselves intoxicated with wine. See? That is the reason why the Holy Quran does not touch it. Simply ignores it And that is again a fascinating style of the Holy Quran. Whatever is man-made in the Bible, the Holy Quran just bypasses it, as though it had never happened, and it has never happened in fact. Whatever is in the Bible which is accepted by the Quran in the right sense, and where people have been misled by alluding to that reference in a wrong way, there the Holy Quran repeats that episode in a style which cannot create any misunderstanding. This is, if you read the Quran, you will be surprised to learn this comparative treatment of the same subjects by the Quran and by the Bible. The biblical statement always, in such cases, tends you to misunderstand whatever happened in a manner that also is against your own conscience. That is the best search. When the Holy Quran narrates the same incident, it narrates in a manner that it does not hurt your sensibilities at all and takes away the sting of the biblical account. So this, what you have referred to, is like one of those incidents. The Holy Quran pays high tribute to Lot and to his sense of chastity. It was this sense of chastity which was at odds with the sense of unchasteness or filthiness of the people of Sodom. This is what brought the ultimate destruction of Sodom by the result of their own sins, but which was converted into a holocaust by Allah. Their own sins were responsible for that, but God made the consequences of their sins available, visible to them, which they experienced themselves. This is what Allah did. But what He did to Lot, He sacrificed all these people and their offspring and their wives and children and everything they stood for the sake of Lot, who had done or committed much worse than they did. This is the question. Now you understand? So your conscience rejects it. It's impossible to have happened. And who are the children of those offsprings? Imagine. From a prophet's own daughter, whose offspring, and what happened to them? It's all a filthy story. Understand? Please.
I think Alan,
your question.
your next question. Sorry.
I would like to address a broad question to you regarding tolerance.
Tolerance.
In particular, the tolerance that is required of a practicing Muslim within British society today, or in fact any Western society. My question is influenced a wee bit by something that happened to a friend and myself recently, whereby we were walking through central London, and we passed a homosexual couple, two men who were holding hands and cuddling and kissing, and we passed by and didn't really notice. But it was only afterwards, whilst we were talking about this, that we wondered aloud what our response would have been if we were parents. If we were parents and we had been with our children and we had
noticed the same thing.
Yes. And my friend was talking about it in a quite negative manner, and that maybe he would want to take his children away. But I was trying to articulate that perhaps you could use it in a positive manner to introduce the subject to children, to talk to them about it, as a learning experience. My question is that there are so many things within Britain or Western society that have to be tolerated. Are there any activities or situations within society today, or perhaps in the near future, that you, as the spiritual leader of the Jamaat, are apprehensive about, that you feel perhaps may become intolerable, that you may feel that you have to publicly advise against?
Okay. To begin with, we must define tolerance. What is tolerance? In your own experience, to begin with again, with an individual personal experience. Let us first define tolerance. If anybody behaves in a manner while you are involved in study, where it interrupts with your process of concentrating on your study, what would your tolerance require of you? Tell me.
I think I would question myself first of all as to whether there is a need.
Yes, there are so many other factors to be brought into play before you make your decision. If you are concentrating on some work, some literary work, sitting in your own library, and your own children make noises and disturb you, would your tolerance require them to go on doing it? Or would your tolerance have an end? You will say, please, you may not shout at them, if you please, but please leave the room.
Okay.
But if you are doing it sitting in a carriage, in a public carriage, where there are others sitting around, then your tolerance must be limited. Then their right of doing whatever they please has an edge over your own personal right not to be interfered with. Understand? So the question of toleration has to be decided first and defined first in a manner as it can help us resolve these problems which you are referring to. Toleration to what degree? At what expense? If toleration of a misbehavior can negatively influence the whole society and influence our offspring in a manner that we do not like them to grow, then the issue of toleration acquires a very different aspect. Then your religious sensibilities should also be brought to play, to come to play, and also the realities of nature have to be gone into. The whole exercise of evolution has to be understood properly to tolerate an act which may go counter to the philosophy of evolution. This is a very important question which I have raised in the end. And in response to what they call sodomy or homosexuality or gayism, this is what I think this last mentioned factor becomes of supreme importance. People seldom realize that sex was created to guarantee the existence of a species. It was not created without purpose. Whether you are a believer in God or you are a believer in evolution, this fundamental cannot be ignored. The sex was created of necessity. The evolutionists say of a necessity which was not consciously understood. The religious people say of a necessity which was consciously understood by the Creator. But the result is the same, on which both must agree. That sex, in whatever form it was created to serve a purpose of continuity of life. And the pleasure attached to it was essential. Otherwise, the two partners will not be involved in this botheration. In this botheration and other botherations to come. To give birth to children and to take care of them and to do this and that and to have wives and their responsibilities, all this will become an unnecessary exercise. So it is pleasure which plays a central role in our paying attention to the reality of sex as a means of continuity of species. Understood?
Mm-hmm.
Now what the gays deny is this fact. They say pleasure which was born incidentally out of sex, we adopt it and we sacrifice the reason why pleasure was granted to us. So the object is sacrificed to an incidental product of pleasure. That is the reason why the people of Sodom were destroyed. Otherwise, people have sinned since the time of Adam. Many people have sinned in a more grievous manner against God than the people of Sodom had done. They were not punished so severely, and they were not punished so severely either. It was only to demonstrate to them that if you deny the very purpose for which your pleasures exist, then will deprive you of that purpose which you have done yourself. So vanish and cease to exist. It's a beautiful answer to the crime they committed. And the same applies to the gays of today. If the society does not take notice of this, then they're in for big trouble. And they're already in for big trouble which they do not realize. It is this gayism which has given birth to AIDS, with all the concomitant factors. If you remove gayism from the modern social habits, all scientists will tell you that AIDS could not have been born. Now, sodomy existed in a manner. Sex relationship with the same sex also existed in a manner everywhere in the world before this. But it had not become a cult, where it had become an open defiance to the laws of nature. This gayism which is now erupted in the modern society is that defiance to the creation of God, for which He must punish them, as He punished the people of Sodom. And this is what is happening, and they do not notice it. This AIDS is a natural result of that which is tantamount to the destruction of Sodom and the second Gomorrah. Because with AIDS you do not exist, you cannot exist. Even if you have offsprings, they will also carry the same means of their own destruction. So why don't people begin to see this? Why do you permit them to go on indulging in a way, in a manner which causes extreme dangers to the extinction of the society. Here, it's not a question of toleration. It's a question of your own existence. It's a question of wisdom. It's a question of seeing a thing right in time before it's too late. Understand?
Mm-hmm.
Understand?
Mm-hmm.
So individually you may not have said to them anything, but you must tell the society it's high time they should take some measure against this growing suicidal tendency. Now instead of that, the scientists are helping them by saying, this you have in your own genes. This is wrong. The genes are born out of the processes which I have told you. How could that be in the genes? There is a corrupt habit born out of social practices and social tolerance of these things. Otherwise, the boys everywhere in the world, in a specific time period, tend to indulge in this habit, yet when they grow older enough to sensibly see these things, they reject them and turn to girls and marriages and things, which is their real import of human nature. Do you understand the point?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this has to be discussed in all this detail.
But if these practices continue, for instance, there is
They continue. If not, there is no if involved at all. They continue and they are doing the damage to the society, which the society is closing their eyes to, and which is, as I have predicted before, based on scientific facts, not on any revelation to me,
Mm-hmm.
that this is going to play havoc with the existence of life all over the earth. Already signs are appearing. It's too late. This has gone deep into them, this virus of AIDS, and this is a destructive method which is directly related to the human ignorance of the laws of nature. The virus of AIDS occupies the very forces which are created by God to defend against danger to life. So whatever you do, you cannot eradicate these forces.
Sure.
If you eradicate them, you eradicate life. This is a problem which has already gone too far. It is only for the world to see their accumulative effect, which I believe will occur beginning from the next year to a few years into the next century. We shall wait and see. Right?
Thank you.
Please. Have any other question?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
If a person is sincere in faith
In faith? Yes.
during his youth age,
Pardon?
if a person is sincere
In his faith?
in faith during his youth age, as Kudam in his youth,
Yes.
can that person become dishonest to his faith when he grows to be aswad, when he grows old?
Of course, anything can happen. Till the last moment when you breathe your last breath, anything can happen to you.
The situation of that person and the person who wasn't a believer or who was
You see,
dishonest to
you are
his faith.
involving a few big ifs. If that person is sincere, that end we are proposing will not happen to him. But if he thinks he is sincere, while deep within there are contradictions in him, then that proposed end can happen to him. Got it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, my next question is on my encounter with non-Ahmadi friends.
Yes.
And at this precise moment, I'm actually having a series of discussions with an Irish Sunni Imam.
MashaAllah.
And
Irish Sunni Imam.
He's from my hometown actually. He's from the same place, the same area I'm from. But he's living in London. So I've decided to encounter him. So we've had some fruitful discussions. But we have come...
What does he gain out of being a Sunni Imam?
I don't know really.
That is what has to be investigated.
It seems he's following more for the sake of it. He's following what he believes in for the sake of it rather than in sincerity. I mean, he's been molded by these people and he's accepted it.
See, this is a claim by you which may not be right, may be right. The fact is, you first let him explain his beliefs in Islam to you. And when the beliefs are explained, then you can rationally attack them where they are wrong. That should be the only course adopted. Because when they go into the interpretation of the Quran presented by some stupid mullahs, then it is very difficult for them to understand that they are believing in absurdities in the name of God. They are believing in the false interpretation of a medieval class of mullahs, and for that they quote the verses of the Quran, which are misinterpreted. But these people from foreign religions converted to Islam, they do not understand the falsehood of their method of interpretation. The verses are quoted, because they believe in the totality of the Quran, they also believe in whatever they infer from it as if it were Quran. So that is why it is better to start with a clean slate and tell him to write down his faith. What he thinks Islam is. What he thinks Islam has to say about Jesus, about the prophethood and this and that, the purpose and all this. If he does so in points, then you know exactly where you must attack him from the point of view of human rationality, which is universal. Right?
The thing is, we've had many discussions and everything you've just said is true, because he has said to me many times that he cannot prove anything from the Quran but from the Hadith.
Either way, whether it's Hadith misinterpreted or the Quran misinterpreted, it comes to the same. Let him confront this question. Can Quran be irrational or can Hadith be irrational? What is rationality? And is God rational or irrational? This is the question. The moment this question is raised and answered, the rest of the journey will become easy. From the point of view of rationality, you can adjudge the misunderstood beliefs, not otherwise. See? Now, the orthodoxy creates a resistance or a defense against this approach by saying that the Quran rules supreme, so what you think rational may not be rational. But the Quran decides what is rational and what is not rational. So however absurd you may think a thing is, if the Quran says so, then it has to be accepted. This is the crooked way they try to prove their things. But the question raised in the answer should be, does the Quran say that thing or not? If a rational meaning can be attributed to the same verse as against an irrational meaning attributed to the same verse, which will you choose? So this is the answer to this dilemma. You better treat the Sunni mullah in the same manner and then let me know what he does in response. Right?
Inshallah.
Thank you. Please.
Again, I would like to address a broad question regarding society, Western society. And that again, having talked to friends, especially Muslim friends, there is this feeling that America is this great capitalist evil power, and that sooner or later something, be it through Islam, or something will happen in America that will enable it to change its ways, and be it war or the great foot of Islam or what have you. However, I in my naive way point to social change, community welfare is a complete mess within America at the moment, and yet there are some interesting social developments going on, and perhaps from within the change will come. But I also point to change in the other direction in the Middle Eastern states, which are strongly Islamic, and
which is strongly purported to be Islamic.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when people try to weigh up this East versus West, can you give me any indications of where change may come, say for instance, in the Middle East?
On this question, I have addressed Americans and Canadians during my visits to the countries. And if you have recourse to any video or audio cassette which has recorded my addresses on this subject, I think it will save me a lot of time here, and it will help you, because I have answered these questions in a much wider way, applying my attention to all the factors individually which can contribute to the answer of this question. So it is not possible to repeat everything here in this short meeting, but Imam Sahib would help you.
Thank you.
In listening to these cassettes. Then you will begin to understand a completely new perspective in which this battle is going on. And inshallah, I am sure your queries will be answered as they were answered by the people who attended my conferences. They left fully satisfied. That's what they said. And that is, they told me while I was eating after that, in dinner or lunch, one after the other they came and expressed their oneness with whatever I had expressed. So I believe they were free, honest people. They could say anything they liked, but for them to wait until they could tell me that they agreed with what I had said indicated that they were impressed. So I'm sure, inshallah, you will also, I hope,
look forward to it.
Right, likely impressed. Please.
Quick question.
No question.
No question.
Hazur, mine again is
You're the only person left, and we have left with 10 minutes. More to go.
I will. It's again based on Islam.
We can bring this session to a close earlier than the set time. There is no harm in that, because sometimes we take more time for this session, and it happens. Today particularly it is possible because we are going to have a question answer session in the afternoon, which will last around 2 hours.
It's almost
2 hours. So anything which may not have been asked here may have been asked there, or may be asked later. So please put this question of yours.
But it was based again on, if you could explain to me how we decide which is a weak hadith and a strong hadith. How do we make that distinction?
The scholars have taken two different approaches. Number one, of determining every link in the chain as to how far authentic that link was, how far trustworthy that link was. This is a very difficult exercise, which I am amazed at the earlier scholar, how they could have taken with such attention, with such detail, investigating about every person who was involved in this chain of narration, his character, his views, his religious belongings, sectarian belongings, and any ulterior motive which he may have entertained. That should be read in Asma'ur Rijal, books on this subject, which tell you everything about the person who is narrated, and there you can find internal weaknesses in the links, with the result that if you pay concentration on every chain of narrators, you may find something somewhere objectionable. That is what dazzles the scholars, and they are divided into two groups. Some shut their eyes to these small flaws, they think small, and whatever is said in the name of these they must follow. The others say no, and they go to the other extreme sometimes to reject all the hadith and throw it overboard, because there are some narrators who are not trustworthy. And as such, a new sect is born in Islam which is called Ahl Quran, the people of the Quran. In the name of this possible flaw in the narration, they reject all the hadiths as such and return to the Quran and say whatever the Quran has said, we must follow that, and no hadith quoted in favor or against an interpretation of the Holy Quran should be acceptable. That will be like giving preference to hadith over the Quran, according to this view. Now, as I explain things to you, you realize they are getting very more and more complicated, aren't they? Very complicated. But I can simplify them in a manner in which your conscience can be fully satisfied. The Quran has laid a few rules for the better understanding of the Quran. The first rule which applies is to the character of the person who is interpreting the Quran. The Quran says that whoever is unholy, whoever is not guided by the Quran, by Allah Himself, cannot hold the position of interpreting Quran correctly. Now this leads us to another dilemma. How do we know who is holy enough and who is not holy enough? But the Quran goes on resolving it itself. It says there is no contradiction in God. There is no contradiction in the creation of God, and there is no contradiction in the spiritual world of God. That is Quran. So if any person interprets the Quran in a manner that it contradicts some other statements of the Quran, then that person has to be wrong. The Quran must support itself. But here another dilemma begins, which is some people say that verse supports our interpretation, and some people say no, that verse rejects your interpretation. It's another problem. How can this be resolved? The Holy Quran has made a declaration. If you fully understand this, then such dilemma cannot be born out of the misinterpretation of the Quran by two different people. The Holy Quran does not say only that the verses do not disagree with each other, they support each other, but it declares that God is universal. And whatever understanding of the Quran you make, it has to be universal. It has to be universally understood to be correct by people whether they belong to Islam or do not belong to Islam. It's the ultimate rationality which is imprinted in human nature, to which the Quran refers. And the same thing applies to the universe. So if the two people wrangle with each other and say our interpretation is according to some of the verses of the Quran, you say, all right, just wait a minute and let me refer what you are referring to my nature which God has created and refer to it as power of bayan. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانَ. God has created man and has given him the power to discriminate between right and wrong. So everybody has that power, Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, Jewish people, everybody. And this deep sense of right and wrong must support the interpretation of the Quran which is presented to you by some mullahs. Wherever it fails, you must say you are wrong, the Quran is right, because the human understanding of the similar things all over the world, regardless of the religion they adhere to, is this understanding, and this contradicts yours. See? So the Holy Quran raises the problem and answers them in a manner that they go on continuously into a flow till you reach the final satisfaction. Then you agree, yes, what I believe in is correct. Understand? Thank you. Now we are left with 2 minutes and 3, 2, 1 second. Any question which can be shortly accommodated into this space, or shall we call it a day?
I think we should call it, because my next question is a long question. So.
Okay. So next time, inshallah, we'll meet in the afternoon, huh? At 4 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
Till then, thank you.
Inshallah.
There it goes.